Sometimes a single moment can strip away everything you ever trusted. For me, that moment happened right in the middle of music, clinking glasses, and those polite, frozen smiles inside the cold banquet hall of Lakeshore Hall in Madison. My name is Lorraine Booker, and I'm 61 years old. And this is the story I kept buried so deep, until silence itself became a kind of pain I could no longer live with. That evening at my own son's wedding, Jonah Booker's future mother-in-law, Elin Harper, walked up to me with a steaming bowl of hot soup, and without hesitation, threw it straight into my face. I can still feel the heat, the sharp smell of paprika, the sweet salty broth, the way my skin burned inch by inch. The soup ran down my neck, soaking into the ivory sweater I had washed and pressed for the wedding of my only child. But the soup wasn't what hurt the most. It was the smile. That faint, razor-thin, satisfied smile on Elin's face, as if she'd been waiting a very long time for this moment. "That's what you deserve," she said, her voice steady enough to chill the whole room. Everything stopped. No music, no laughter, just me standing there with my face burning and my heart splintering. But worse than the soup was Jonah. My only son, the child I raised alone for over 3 decades, the little boy who once said, "Mom, you're my hero." He sat there in the suit I had tailored by hand, arms crossed, leaning back in his chair, staring at me with nothing in his eyes. And then he spoke. "Mom, she's right." Just 4 words, but they hit like a storm, ripping through the last structure you believed could never collapse. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't ask why. I simply lifted the napkin from my lap, wiped my face with whatever dignity I still had, stood up, and kept my back as straight as possible. I walked out past hundreds of eyes that immediately dropped to the floor in shame. But not one of them spoke up. Not one. But before I left that room, before I closed the door behind me, I did something no one believed I had the strength to do. I took out my phone, dialed a number I'd saved weeks before, and said only 3 words. "It's time now." I hung up, closed the door. No one followed. No one asked if I was okay. No one cared. I drove through the bitter night from Madison back to my small apartment in Milwaukee. Cold air slipped in through the window and stung every raw patch of skin on my face. One question kept circling in my mind. How did I end up here? How does a mother become someone her only child can strip of dignity on the most important day of his life? How can a family who barely knows me step in, twist him, shape him, and turn his heart into something I barely recognize? I once believed a mother's love was the one thing that couldn't be betrayed. But that night, I learned a darker truth. The people we love most are the ones who can break us the deepest. And sometimes, silence is the last weapon we have left. Do you want to know what happened after that phone call? I promise you, they will never forget that night. But before I take you there, I need to go back. Back to the days when I still thought the Harpers were just cold people, not destructive ones. Back to when I believed Jonah, my son, could never be changed by anyone. Back to when I naively thought gratitude was something permanent. I was wrong, so wrong. And for you to understand why, I have to begin with the past. If this story reminds you of a hurt you once carried, you can leave me a small sign by hitting like, just so I know I'm not telling this story alone. 3 years before everything collapsed, my life was peaceful in the way only someone past the middle of their life can understand. Not perfect, not wealthy, but mine. Every corner, every habit, every cent inside my old attic apartment on Maple Street in Milwaukee. Each morning I brewed strong coffee and sat by the wooden window, watching sunlight catch on the snow-covered rooftops. I watered the yellow chrysanthemums I'd planted the fall before, then headed downstairs, unlocked the little tailoring shop I owned, Booker Stitchery. I wasn't rich, I never had been, but after my husband walked out when Jonah was only 4, I learned something. A woman can build an entire life with her own 2 hands. No charity, no pity. I altered dresses for mothers, for teenage girls getting ready for prom, for church women who wanted to look elegant without showing off. With nothing but sharp scissors and patience, fabric always told me what it needed. Jonah grew up in that small space filled with spools of thread and the hum of sewing machines. He saw me wake at 5 to finish a rush order. He saw me stitch until my fingers went numb. He saw me cry from exhaustion, then wipe my tears and keep going. "Mom," he once said at 9 years old, "when I grow up, I'll work hard so you won't have to struggle anymore." His big, bright eyes believed it. And I believed him. Jonah was kind, hardworking, thoughtful. He studied well, not because I pushed him, but because he understood the value of every opportunity. Every Sunday, he helped me clean the shop, wipe the mirrors, sort buttons by color. "How do you know which dress suits who?" he asked once. "Because I listen," I told him. "People always tell you what they need, even when they don't use words." He nodded, then ran outside to play basketball with the neighborhood kids. The day he got his acceptance letter to the business school at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, I hugged him so tightly I thought I might break his shoulders. Every sacrifice I'd made had taken shape. No loans, no begging. I took night shifts. I altered wedding gowns for wealthy families who would never invite me to their dinner tables. But they paid, and that money helped Jonah study with dignity. He graduated with honors. He landed a job at a major real estate development firm. He started earning money, wearing suits I personally hemmed, visiting me every Sunday with warm waffles and fresh yellow chrysanthemums. "Thank you, Mom," he would say, kissing my forehead. "Everything I have comes from you." I thought my life had finally grown lighter, until Jonah met Elin Harper. Elin was the only daughter of a wealthy Madison family. The Harpers owned a chain of agricultural equipment suppliers across Wisconsin and Minnesota. They knew local politicians. They sat on the hospital board. They were the kind of family people like me never stepped close to. The first time Jonah mentioned her, something unfamiliar flickered in his voice, a brightness more like neon than the warm glow of joy, a brightness so cold it could blind. "Mom, I think Elin is really special." I listened, but something in my chest tightened. Then came the day Jonah wanted to take me to meet the Harper family. I wore a simple navy blue dress I tailored for an older client. Not extravagant, but tasteful. I put on my mother's pearl earrings, smoothed my curls, and looked at myself in the mirror. I wanted to make a good impression, not for them, but for Jonah. The restaurant in Maple Bluff, that neighborhood of old mansions along Lake Mendota, wasn't somewhere I belonged. Too elegant, too quiet. Everyone dressed like they'd stepped off a magazine cover. Elin walked in first, white dress, high heels, a polite smile, but eyes cold, a coldness that reminded me of metal. We talked about the weather, spring fairs, her work in interior design. I tried to be warm, but inside, a soft whisper tugged at me. This girl doesn't like me. I brushed it away, told myself I was being paranoid. I even felt hopeful when Elin said her mother was very excited to meet me. But the way she addressed me, Mrs. Lorraine, not Ms. Lorraine, not Mrs. Booker, but Mrs. Lorraine, the kind of title that keeps someone outside the boundary line, like a stranger who wandered into a world that wasn't meant for her. Jonah squeezed my hand under the table, trying to reassure me. "Everything's going to be fine, Mom." I wanted to believe him, and I did believe him, until 3 months later, the dinner at the Harper house, where everything officially began to crack. Their home in the Blackhawk subdivision looked like a museum. Crystal chandeliers, sweeping oak staircases, Persian rugs, oil paintings. Beautiful, lavish. But so cold, my heart cooled with it. Elin opened the door, smiled at me without actually looking at me. And then I heard the first words out of Marion Harper's mouth. Elin's mother. "Well, this is Jonah's mother?" The way she stretched the word "this," as if I were an item placed in the wrong exhibit. I understood instantly. I wasn't a guest in their home. I was an inconvenience they had to tolerate. Throughout dinner, Marion talked about her golf club, their vacations in Door County, the new SUV model they just couldn't bring themselves to buy in the standard trim. Elin touched Jonah's arm repeatedly, speaking about the new house, the church wedding, the luxury hotel reception. No one asked what I thought. No one acted like I existed. And that night, for the first time, Jonah avoided my eyes when I spoke. For the first time, I realized I was being pushed out of my son's life. Slowly, subtly, but mercilessly. Marian poured more wine, looked at me, and said in a voice soft as a feather but sharp as a blade, "My daughter needs stability. Jonah needs to focus on the future, not the past." The past, she meant me. I didn't argue. I just smiled, the kind of smile seasoned mothers wear like armor. But that night, when I got home, I made myself a cup of coffee in the old ceramic mug that had followed me for 10 years. I stared out at the foggy Milwaukee skyline and wondered, how far will people like them go to remove me from Jonah's life? I thought I knew the answer. I knew nothing at all. The months after that dinner at the Harpers felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. Every step hurt. But I kept walking. I kept telling myself that the bond between a mother and her son was unshakable, no matter how hard outsiders tried to pull it apart. I was wrong. But back then, I didn't know. Jonah, the son who used to visit every Sunday with warm waffles and a head full of stories, started coming less and less. At first, every 2 weeks, then once a month, then even less, until I had to remind myself, he's busy. He has a new life. This is normal for grown children. But nothing about it was normal. Every time Jonah canceled a visit, the reason was the same. "Sorry, Mom. Elin wants to have dinner with her family." "Sorry, Mom. Marian already reserved a table at the club." "Sorry, Mom. We're busy planning the wedding." Always sorry, Mom. But every apology made me feel like I was becoming a secondary character in my own son's life. I smiled every time Jonah said it. I told him, "It's okay, honey. I understand." But inside, layers upon layers of hurt kept stacking up like snow on an old roof. And then came the wedding dress incident. One windy afternoon near Madison's Easttown Commercial District, Jonah called. "Ellen wants to invite you to help pick her wedding dress. She says you understand fabric better than anyone." For the first time in months, I actually felt hope. I arrived 30 minutes early in a plum-colored cardigan, hair pinned back neatly, my heart fluttering like I was being invited back into my son's life. But Ellen and her group of friends showed up nearly 40 minutes late. When they finally walked in, loud laughter and expensive perfume filled the room. "Oh, Mrs. Lorraine, you're here already," Ellen said, kissing the air beside my cheeks without touching me. During the entire fitting, I sat alone on a pink velvet sofa, surrounded by camera clicks, dress critiques, and Aylin's sharp instructions to the staff. "Pull the waist in more. I want this in a smaller size. The lighting has to be good. I'm posting this to my story." No one asked me anything. No one invited me closer. Only when Aylin stepped out in a classic French lace gown, long enough to sweep the silk carpet, did she finally turn toward me. "Mrs. Lorraine, what do you think?" Suddenly, every gaze landed on me. Not because they wanted my opinion, but because they wanted to see if I fit. I swallowed the tightness in my throat and answered honestly. "It's beautiful, but the off-shoulder neckline doesn't flatter you. You have delicate shoulders. Lace sleeves or thin straps would highlight them better." A heavy silence fell. Aylin's friends frowned. Aylin smirked. And Marian, legs crossed like a ruling queen, said, "Here we choose dresses based on modern trends, Lorraine, not the vintage styles you're used to." Her friends giggled. Aylin added plainly, "It's okay, Mom. She's not really up to date with what's fashionable." I sat there quietly, like a shadow. No one asked me another question. When we left the boutique, Jonah hurried over, eyes hopeful. "So, Mom, what did you think?" "Everything was wonderful, honey." "And you're glad you came with us, right?" I nodded. I lied. Because telling the truth would have made me look like an overly sensitive mother. Right then, Marian curled a finger, summoning Jonah. Jonah, let's go eat. 3 people is plenty. Elin turned to me, polite smile and all. Rest well, Mrs. Lorraine. Today is just family discussion time. Jonah didn't say, Mom, come with us. He didn't insist. He didn't hesitate. He just leaned down, kissed my cheek gently, and walked away with them. I stood there on the sidewalk, snow dust drifting into my face. And for the first time in my life, I cried in public. Not much, just a few quiet tears. I took the bus back to Milwaukee. I didn't want to spend extra on an Uber. When I got home, I made a cup of coffee in my old ceramic mug, the one that had listened to more heartbreak than any person ever had. On the table sat the expensive porcelain cup Marion had given me during our first dinner, untouched. It wasn't a gift, it was a message. You don't belong in our family. I stared at that cup for a long time, and one question kept rising like weeds through concrete. How far will the Harpers go to erase me from Jonah's life? I thought I'd seen the worst, but I had no idea. Their cruelty was only beginning. The weeks that followed felt like watching a building fracture in slow motion, bricks loosening one by one while everyone pretended nothing was happening. Jonah still called me, but the calls grew shorter, emptier, and filled with long, hollow pauses. Are you doing okay, Jonah? I'm fine, Mom. How's Elin? Busy planning the wedding. And you? Mom, I'm busy too. Every call was the same. A little small talk, then a quick goodbye, as if talking to me drained him. But the worst part wasn't Jonah's silence. It was the moment I realized I simply no longer had a place in my son's life. Not because he didn't love me, but because someone was pulling him away, inch by inch, moment by moment. And the day I learned I'd actually been replaced happened by accident. One Saturday morning, while sewing buttons on a customer's shirt, I overheard 2 young women chatting outside my shop. Did you hear about the Harpers' pre-wedding party? Super fancy.
Oh, the one at the resort on Lake Mendota?
Yeah, they invited a ton of people from the groom's side, too. I'm the groom's side, I thought, but I had never been invited, never even told. When they left, I just sat there frozen. A major celebration, and the groom's mother hadn't even been mentioned. That afternoon, I waited, then called Jonah. Honey, are you free this weekend? Mom wants to have dinner with you. A long silence. Oh, Mom, actually, Elin's family's hosting a little barbecue. I thought you'd be busy, so... I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles went white. I'm not busy, Jonah, but it's fine. You go ahead. I'm sorry, Mom. Next time, okay? Deep down, I knew there wouldn't be a next time. But what broke me more was finding out what they said about me when I wasn't around. One of my longtime customers, Mrs. Lynette, came in for a holiday dress fitting. While she stood before the mirror, she looked at me with a gentleness that made my stomach drop. Lorraine, are you all right? I heard some people from the Harper side think you're a little... inappropriate. Inappropriate? How? I asked. She sighed. They say you're too simple, too ordinary. They're worried you'll make Jonah look bad. I was furious when I heard it. I smiled, a thin, brittle smile. That word, inappropriate, kept scraping through my mind like metal against glass, and slowly, piece by piece, they pushed me aside, as if I were merely the doorkeeper of Jonah's past, and they would determine his future. Then came the night Jonah invited me to dinner, just the 2 of us, like old times. I was so happy, I woke at 5 to iron the burgundy dress I had sewn for myself. I styled my hair neatly, put on a soft mauve lipstick. I wanted to believe it was the night we'd reconnect. But when I arrived early at the Shorewood restaurant, Jonah walked in with Ellen beside him. Oh, I thought it was just the 2 of us. I tried to hide my disappointment. I'm sorry, Mom. Ellen wanted to come. I forced a smile. Throughout dinner, Ellen talked non-stop. Their honeymoon in Seychelles, the apartment her parents planned to gift them, the new car that needed to be more luxurious than Jonah's current one. You know, Mom, Ellen said, voice dripping with pride, The apartment is in Lakeview. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Daddy says a good start should match their status. Jonah looked at her as if she had just announced the cure for all human suffering. And me? I stayed quiet, smiling when appropriate, disappearing when necessary. But when the check arrived, Jonah glanced at me awkwardly. "Mom, can I borrow $2,000? I'm tight this month with the wedding expenses." $2,000. I didn't have extra. I still had electricity, the shop rent, groceries. But I pulled it out. Money I'd saved to repair my old sewing machine. "Of course, honey, don't worry. If it weren't for you, I'd be lost," he said, sliding the money into his wallet as if it were nothing unusual. He never paid it back, and I never mentioned it, because by then I understood something cold and brutal. I was no longer Jonah's mother. I was just the place he returned to when he needed something, and left behind when something better appeared. I went home that night, brewed coffee, held my old ceramic mug, and looked out at the Milwaukee lights. And in those lights, I realized the worst hadn't happened yet. It was only beginning. There are nights when you finally understand you're not part of the table. You're just the extra chair someone left there out of politeness. That dinner, inside the Harper's Greystone house, was exactly that kind of night. Marion Harper, the woman who always sat at the head of the table as if it were a throne, called me with a voice so sweet I knew instantly something was wrong. "Lorraine, we'd love to invite you for dinner to discuss more of the wedding plans. It's important the 2 families understand each other, isn't it?" Sweet words, cold intention. I knew, but I still went for Jonah. I arrived on time. The oak door swung open the second I pressed the bell. Marion looked me over from head to toe, then stepped aside. "Oh, you're here. Come in." The way she said "you" sounded like something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. In the dining room, the long table was covered with roast beef, kale salad, red wine, warm bread, but the seats had already been arranged. Marion at the head, Elin beside her, Jonah across from Elin, Douglas Harper, Elin's father, on Marion's right. And me? A chair all the way at the far end, nearly a full meter away. I understood instantly. I'd been invited, but not included. Jonah glanced at me, frowning. "Mom, why don't you sit closer?" Marion placed a hand over Jonah's, smiling too sweetly. "Oh, sweetheart, Lorraine will be more comfortable down there. She won't feel pressured to socialize too much." Soft laughter rippled around the table, everyone except me. I sat in that cold, lonely chair, feeling like a housemaid who'd been granted permission to use the dining room. Throughout dinner, they spoke in a language I understood word for word, but still felt shut out of. A kind of social dialect polished by money and practiced superiority. Elin deserves a wedding with real class. "Jonah, you'll need a new car to match the image. We'll book the venue at the Lake Mendota Resort. Cost is irrelevant." Yes, we can't let the Harper family look modest. I kept my face calm, fingers tracing the napkin like I was sewing a difficult seam. Then Marion turned toward me. "Lorraine, what do you think about hiring a professional wedding planner? Our family typically works with high-end services, not the small, home-style approach." Not like you, not like the world Jonah grew up in, not like the life I built. I smiled politely, keeping my voice even. As long as Jonah and Elin are happy, I'll support whatever they choose. Elin gave me a satisfied look, the look of someone who knows the entire chessboard has already tilted in their favor. Then came the moment they revealed what they truly wanted. Douglas set down his wine glass and said in a tone dripping with false courtesy, "Jonah will be moving into our new apartment in Middleton. It's more convenient for his career." Jonah nodded as if the decision had been made weeks ago. I kept my composure. "And what about your current place, honey?" Elin jumped in immediately. "Oh, we can't stay in a temporary place forever." Temporary. That apartment Jonah was once so proud of, the one he showed me with shining eyes saying, "Mom, I want you to stay here anytime you feel lonely." Now it was something for them to belittle. The real blow came when dessert arrived, creme brulee in elegant porcelain cups. Marian tapped her spoon against hers, smiling with theatrical delight. In the Harper family, every bride receives a gift from her future mother-in-law. I stiffened. I didn't know what Jonah had told them, but clearly Marian wanted a performance. "Elin," she said, opening a velvet box. "I'm giving you this pearl necklace. It represents class and legacy." Applause around the table. Then Marian looked at me. "And Lorraine, we also have a small gift for you." A small white box was carried all the way down to my lonely seat. I opened it. A spa discount voucher from a business they owned. A voucher. Not a keepsake, not a symbol, not a welcome. Just a printed coupon wrapped in polite smiles. Douglas added, "We want you to feel taken care of." Soft laughter again. I set the voucher on the table, feeling my hand tremble. Not from anger, not from embarrassment, but from the unmistakable sensation of being treated as an obligation, a charity case, an extra. When dinner ended, I stood and tried to catch Jonah's eyes. "Honey, can I talk to you for a minute?" Jonah rubbed the back of his neck, uncomfortable. "Oh, Mom, I need to stay. We have more family matters to discuss with the Harpers. Let's talk another time, okay?" I stayed silent. I couldn't make a single word come out. I stepped down their stone stairs into the freezing night. Snow drifted lightly, streetlights glimmering on the wet pavement, and I felt smaller than my own shadow. And one question echoed inside me. How could they take my son from me, so effortlessly? But the answer would come weeks later, a truth I should have seen sooner. They didn't just want to remove me from Jonah's life. They wanted to rebuild Jonah in their image. And everything else had to be erased, including me. What happened after that dinner at the Harper house taught me one thing. Family doesn't die in one dramatic moment. It dies in the small details, the ones we overlook because we still love. One early March afternoon, with Madison coated in a thin layer of fog, I decided to visit Jonah. No warning, no planning, just because I missed him. I baked a batch of the banana bread he'd loved since childhood, wrapped it in a linen towel, and took the bus from Milwaukee to Madison, an hour and a half of longing and hope. When I arrived at Jonah's new apartment in Middleton, the one the Harpers had gifted him, I stood waiting in the lobby, holding the warm box, feeling like a mother waiting for her child to come home from school. I texted, "I'm downstairs. Can you come down, sweetheart?" Jonah replied quickly, "Give me a minute." I smiled. At least he answered. But when the elevator opened, it wasn't Jonah. It was Elin. She looked at me like a stranger who had wandered into a private space. "Mrs. Lorraine, what are you doing here?" I steadied myself. "I brought Jonah some banana bread. Could you call him, please?" Elin didn't move, didn't open the door, didn't step aside. She crossed her arms. "We're on a schedule. Jonah's busy." "I just want to drop this off." "No need," she cut in. "Jonah's on the diet. You can take it back." I froze for a moment. Then I saw Jonah appear behind her. "Jonah," I whispered. The voice didn't feel like my own. He walked closer, eyes avoiding mine. He didn't open the door. He stood in the doorway like taking one more step toward me would break some rule. "Sweetheart, I just wanted to bring you something." Elin looked at him, said nothing, but tilted her head slightly. A tiny gesture, but Jonah understood. He sighed, stepped half a foot into the hallway, one hand gripping the doorframe like he was guarding a threshold. "Mom, next time just text me first, okay? We're really busy with the wedding." I held up the box. "I made this since morning. I know you—" "I told you already," Elin interrupted. "Jonah doesn't eat these things anymore." She slid a hand onto Jonah's shoulder, marking her territory. Then Jonah said a sentence my heart memorized word for word. "Mom, you don't need to follow my new life. Elin and we'll take care of things." I froze. It felt like someone pressed a hand against my chest and pushed, hard. I spoke quietly, trying to keep my voice from shaking. "I'm just your mother, Jonah, not a burden." He pressed his lips together, still avoiding my eyes. "I didn't say you're a burden." Elin smirked. We just need you to understand boundaries. Boundaries. One simple word. But for me, it was a blade cutting the last thread I'd held for 30 years. I turned away with the banana bread still in my hands. No tears, no questions, no accusations, just steps, one after another. When the lobby doors closed behind me, the soft click sounded like the final lock between me and my son. On the bus back to Milwaukee, I held the now cool loaf in my lap. The sky outside was as gray as ash, and I felt empty. At a stop in Sun Prairie, an elderly couple boarded. The woman rested her hand gently on her husband's. He smiled. I watched them and thought, Jonah should have known the value of a hand placed gently over another. But instead, he was letting someone guide him away from me. Back at the shop, I opened the door. The familiar wind chime rang. I placed the bread on the counter and dropped onto my chair, sitting in stillness for a long time. I remembered Jonah eating banana bread after basketball practice. I remembered him hugging me after every exam. I remembered him saying, "Mom, I promise I'll take care of you one day." Those memories stacked on top of one another, heavy and unbearable. Then, my phone buzzed. A message from Jonah. "Sorry if earlier made you upset." I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't reply. Some apologies aren't meant to heal you. They're meant to make the person who hurt you feel better. The next day, Marian Harper walked into my shop. I had never seen her step foot into this neighborhood, a street of small markets and modest cafes. She stood there like someone entering a cramped room she didn't want to touch. "Lorraine," she began, "I'm here to clarify a few things." I straightened my back and said nothing. Marian glanced around, then lowered her voice. "When the kids get married, we need a certain consistency in image. Jonah is rising. He can't let a messy past affect his future." Messy past me. I spoke softly, slowly. "I'm Jonah's mother. And you're not part of his future." She said it with the firmness of a verdict. "It's best," Marian continued, "if you keep some distance. Jonah needs to focus on my daughter, not on old emotional ties." My chest tightened, but I didn't let her see it. "That's what you want," I said. "Not what I want." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "Lorraine, you don't understand. Jonah has chosen his path. And that path," she looked straight into my eyes, "no longer includes you." That night, I worked until late. I needed my hands to stay busy, because if they stopped, my heart would collapse. What I didn't know was that all the cruelty I had endured was still only the surface. I didn't know they didn't just want to push me away. They wanted to erase me. And I had no idea that something even worse was coming. Not from them, but from Jonah. Some truths don't arrive with explosions. They arrive in something small, light enough to hold between two fingers, yet heavy enough to crush a heart. For me, that truth came inside a brown envelope. That afternoon, rain fell lightly over Milwaukee. I was closing stitchery earlier than usual. A lingering headache had clung to me all day. Maybe it was the echo of Ellen and Marian's words running loops in my mind, snapping like tight threads inside a sewing machine. Just as I turned the key, I saw a man standing under the shop's awning, baseball cap pulled low, dark jacket, face shadowed by the rain. "Were you waiting for me?" I asked. He didn't answer at first. He simply held out a thin envelope and murmured, "You need to see this." Before I could ask anything else, he walked away. Quick, silent, as if afraid someone might see him. I stood there under the awning, staring at the envelope in my hand. Light, empty feeling. But something inside me knew. What was inside would not be light at all. I carried it back into the shop, sat down on my worn chair, opened it, and the moment I saw the first photo, the rain vanished, the street noise disappeared, and something hollow opened inside my chest. In the picture, Jonah, my only son, was standing very close to Marian. Not Elin, Marian, Elin's mother. The distance between them was not something you could misunderstand. In another photo, Marion had her hand on Jonah's chest. Another, Jonah leaning in slightly, his expression unfamiliar. He wasn't shocked, he wasn't resisting, he responded. I kept flipping through the photos like someone replaying a film from a life they were never allowed to enter. Then came the last picture, the one that made my hands shake. Marion and Jonah entering an apartment, not Jonah's, but somewhere else, in a luxury building near Lake Mendota. The door closed behind them. No one needed to explain anything. I already knew what happened behind those walls. I sat frozen, clutching the photos, tears sliding down onto the glossy prints before I even realized I was crying. Not because Jonah betrayed me, not because Marion, the woman who once looked at me like I was dust on her shoe, clearly had no moral boundaries after all. But because my son was being controlled in a way he couldn't even see, bent, shaped, guided, recreated into something he wasn't. And I, the only person who had ever protected him, had been shoved aside. I took a breath and gathered every ounce of courage to call Jonah. He answered after 2 rings. "Sweetheart, can you come by the shop today? Just for a bit?" His voice was wary, tired. "Mom, what do you need?" "I just need to see you." "I'm busy right now." "This is important, Jonah." A long silence, then, Tonight I'm having dinner with Elon's mother." Her, Marion. A knot tightened inside my throat, fear mixed with heartbreak. If I confronted him now, it would turn into a war. But if I stayed silent, I might lose him forever. I hung up without another word. That evening, I laid the photos on my dining table, beneath the soft yellow glow of my old lamp. The dim light made Jonah's face in the photos look even more foreign. I thought of when he was small, curled up beside me on our old sofa while I read to him, asking questions in that soft, curious voice, saying, "Mom, when you're old, I won't let anyone make you sad." But now, he was the one hurting me the most. My phone vibrated, a message from an unknown number. "If you want the full truth, don't tell Jonah. He is not as free as you think." I read it again, and again. Not free. My pulse quickened, pounding hard against my ribs. If Jonah wasn't free, then who was holding the leash? Another message came. "Meet me, I have proof. And if you do nothing, you'll lose your son forever." I looked at the envelope again, at every photo, every detail. And for the first time in my life, I understood. I wasn't up against just the Harper's coldness. I was up against something darker, intentional, calculated, something designed. I placed my hand on the stack of photos and whispered into the empty room. "Sweetheart, I won't let anyone take you away." But I had no idea that in that very moment, I had already stepped into a battle I was not prepared for. A battle where the enemy wasn't only Marion Harper. It was Jonah, too. I met him at a small cafe near the Milwaukee Intermodal Station, the kind of place crowded enough to stay anonymous, yet noisy enough to hide conversations no one should overhear. He introduced himself with a cold, steady handshake. "Sheldon Graves, you're Lorraine Booker?" I nodded, still holding the box of banana bread, a painful little habit I carried everywhere now. Graves didn't waste time. He opened a worn leather bag and placed a thin file on the table. "I was hired to investigate the Harper family," he said. "Not by you, but by someone inside their circle." "Inside their circle?" I frowned. Graves nodded. "Yes, and that person doesn't want you or Jonah to get dragged into what's happening." Before I could ask anything, he slid the file toward me. My hands trembled as I opened it. The first photo, Jonah and Marion entering the Lake Mendota apartment, matched the ones I'd received the day before. But this time, there was more. Graves turned the page. Bank transfers, large amounts. Sender, Douglas Harper. Recipient, Jonah Booker. "This is the pre-marriage assistance they gave Jonah," Graves said, "but it's not a gift." I looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" "It's leverage," he replied, each word hitting the table like a nail. "It's how the Harpers control people, They put Jonah in a position where he believes he owes them, and people who feel indebted obey. My chest tightened. Every beat hurt. Graves flipped another page. This time, not photos. A recording, with printed transcripts. The first line stole the breath from my lungs. Marion. Ellen will be protected. Jonah will stay exactly where we need him. The next line chilled me deeper. Douglas. If anything unfortunate happens after the wedding, the inheritance will shift. Unfortunate. Inheritance. My voice barely formed. What are they talking about? Graves leaned back. I can't say for certain, but these photos, these transfers, this recording, all point to a plan. I shook my head. No, Jonah would never hurt anyone. He's not that kind of man. Graves looked at me for a long moment, the look of someone who's seen the darkest parts of other people's lives. Your son is being manipulated, and the one manipulating him most isn't Elin. A cold wave rolled up my spine. It's Marion Harper. Graves leaned in, voice low. You don't know what these people are capable of, Lorraine. The Harper family doesn't fight loud. They use power, connections, and money to make everyone else kneel. But why would Jonah get close to his future mother-in-law? My voice cracked. Graves answered plainly. Because Marion wanted him to. I felt sick, not because Jonah betrayed me, but because my son, the boy who once lived in a tiny attic apartment, was being used like a pawn in someone else's war. What am I supposed to do? I whispered. Graves didn't hesitate. You need allies, and fortunately, you have one. He pulled a business card from his bag and set it gently on the table. Bold letters, Harlan Whitford, retired, county judge, Dane County. I stared at the name. Whitford. I'd heard it before. A distant relative of the Harper family, but not part of their glittering social world. A man who had withdrawn to a quiet ranch outside the city, far from their influence. Why would he help me? I asked. Graves held my gaze. Whitford knows something you need to hear before the wedding. I gripped the edge of the table. What is it? Graves shook his head. I'm not allowed to say, but meet him, now. If you don't, what's coming will be far beyond your control. I looked down at the file again. Each photo felt like a knife, each line of the transcript like a warning knocking at my door. Then I said, I'll meet him. Graves nodded. Before it's too late. That night, back home, I spread every photo and document across my kitchen table. The dim yellow light made the room look like a crime scene no one wanted to solve. I stared at Jonah's face in the images. Tight, distant, trapped. A piece of me shattered, but another piece, the part of me that had survived 30 years as a single mother, burned awake. Not out of anger, out of fear. Fear that if I didn't act, Jonah would be swallowed by something far worse than betraying me. I touched the business card. Harlan Whitford. The name felt heavy as stone. Sweetheart, I whispered into the quiet room. I won't let anyone steal you from yourself. But what I didn't know was this. The moment I decided to fight, I stepped into a battle that had been arranged long before I ever realized I was in it. I met Harlan Whitford on a morning with pale sunlight, the kind of soft, washed-out light that feels peaceful yet fragile, as if the day itself might break. His ranch sat on the outskirts of Wanakee, 20 minutes outside Madison. A white wooden house, an apple orchard blooming behind it, and a weathered fence that looked like it had a story ready to be told. Harlan was waiting for me on the porch. He wore an olive sweater, hair silver, posture steady as old oak. As I stepped onto the porch, he said, "Lorraine Booker?" "Yes." "Thank you for coming." His voice was steady, low, no useless sympathy, no theatrics. "Graves said you're looking for the truth." I nodded. I don't know who or what I'm supposed to trust anymore. Harlan invited me inside. The living room smelled of pine wood and fresh coffee, a scent that pressed on my chest with memories of quiet mornings long gone. He placed 2 cups of tea on the table and sat across from me. "What is it you want to know most?" he asked. I drew a breath. The truth about the Harper family, about my son, and why everything in his life has twisted into this. Harlan nodded slowly. Then he reached into a drawer and set an old wooden box between us. I'll be direct. What I'm about to tell you won't be easy. I braced myself. He opened the box. Inside, a small stack of documents, several letters, and a plain black USB. He pushed them toward me. The Harper family, he began, isn't just wealthy. They're accustomed to bending people with money and influence. My fingers tightened around the edge of my chair. Harlan unfolded one of the letters, smoothing it flat. Douglas Harper, Elyn's father, has long wanted his daughter to marry someone compliant, someone easy to maneuver. They need a middleman to sign transfers they don't want traced back to them. He looked at me, eyes sharp but filled with a quiet sadness. Jonah was the perfect target. My throat closed. But why Jonah? He grew up with nothing. Exactly, Harlan said. He has no financial or political foundation to push back. Then he slid the USB closer to me. This contains a recording. You should hear it, but not alone. My hands shook. A recording of what? A private Harper meeting, Harlan replied. In it, Marion makes it clear they want Jonah to sign off on a transfer of assets tied to a very questionable investment. My heart hammered painfully in my chest. My son would never be involved in anything illegal, I whispered. No, Harlan said softly, but he's being manipulated, and you've seen it. Marion knows how to use power, leverage, even seduction to control people. His last word felt like a blade dragged across the table. I saw again the photos, the closed apartment door, the closeness, Jonah's expression, strained, conflicted, vulnerable. I gripped the chair harder. You're saying Marion used her relationship with Jonah to corner him? Yes, Harlan said. She read him like a book. A boy who's proud but lonely. A boy who's never had wealth or recognition. A boy who wants to prove himself. Marion exploited that. Then he added something I didn't expect. But that's not the worst part. I looked at him, bracing. Harlan opened the final set of documents. Douglas Harper is in serious legal trouble, a failed investment, a potential fraud investigation, and they need someone else to take the fall. My entire body tensed. No, Jonah would never. Lorraine. Harlan cut in, gently but firmly. They're preparing to shift liability onto your son. The room spun. Harlan went on. And the wedding? It legitimizes the connection. I couldn't breathe. Once Jonah is officially part of the family, no one will question why he's signing documents. He becomes the perfect shield. I felt cold seep into my bones. Harlan continued, voice heavy. Why do you think Marion keeps Jonah close emotionally? Why she inserts herself into every decision? Why Elyn never challenges her? Why the Harpers keep pushing you out? I stared at him, realization breaking over me like a wave. So Jonah has no one left to warn him. Exactly, Harlan said. They want him completely dependent, and when the moment comes, he'll sign anything they put in front of him. My voice trembled. Judge Whitford, what do I do? He looked me straight in the eyes, a gaze firm but deeply human. I'll help you, but you must promise one thing. What? No matter what you discover about Jonah, you cannot let your emotions blind you to the truth. I held my breath. Because what you're about to learn, Harlan said quietly, will hurt far worse than anything you've seen. On the drive back to Milwaukee, I sat motionless. Cold wind from Lake Monona slapped against the window, but I felt nothing. Only one sentence echoed in my mind. They plan to use your son as their shield. Back home, I spread the documents across my table. The USB lay there, small, dark, ominous. I touched it. My hand shook so violently I pulled it back. Jonah, I whispered, what have they dragged you into? Outside, the sky had gone storm dark. the kind of darkness that warns of something powerful approaching. And I knew that storm was about to tear apart everything I thought I knew about my son. I remember that afternoon with painful clarity. A gray, bruised kind of day, like ink bleeding across paper. The kind of light that tells you something is about to break. My little tailoring shop was quiet. Only the faint hum of the old space heater and the soft scent of cotton fabric lingered in the air. And then, the bell above the door rang. I looked up, expecting a familiar customer picking up a hemmed dress, but it wasn't anyone I knew. It was a young delivery man in a blue cap holding a thick manila envelope. "Are you Lorraine Booker?" I nodded. "I just need your signature." Nothing about it stood out. No company logo, no return address, no sender. Just my name, written in thin, slanted black ink, like the writer was trying to hide whatever they felt. I signed. The door closed behind him. His engine faded into the street noise. And then it was just me and the envelope. A cold trail crept down my spine. I set it on the sewing table, sat down and whispered, "God, what now?" I opened it. Photographs slid out like sharp, silent blades. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Dark images, slightly blurry. Taken from a distance, a parking lot, a restaurant, a hotel corridor. Then my eyes landed on two faces, Jonah and Marion Harper, walking close, far too close. Jonah opening a car door for her. Marion smiling, her head tilted in a way no woman tilts it. Unless the man beside her makes her feel soft. My breath caught. The next photo nearly stopped my heart. Outside the Oak Hill Hotel, Marion's arm was wrapped around Jonah's waist. And Jonah's hand, my son's hand, rested on her lower back. Intimate, natural, impossible to misinterpret. No, Jonah, no. The photos slid through my hands as I gathered them, but one fell to the floor. I bent down to pick it up, and that was the one that broke me. Jonah on a balcony, holding Marion from behind. Marion leaning into him, eyes closed, like two people sharing something forbidden, something dangerous. I dropped the photo, the room tilted. I stumbled into the bathroom and vomited, violently, emptily, until there was nothing left inside but shaking. I sat on the cold tile. Jonah, no, no. But the photos were a truth that didn't bend for anyone. My son was entangled in something deeply wrong. And the woman at the center of it was his fiancée's mother. Back at the sewing table, still trembling, I noticed a small slip of paper inside the envelope. One line, "You need to know the truth before it's too late." No name, no signature, no number, a warning, or a threat. I sat down, heart pounding. And then an idea, sharp, sudden, flashed across my mind. Someone wants me to act. Someone who knows the truth is explosive enough to destroy the Harper family. I picked up the photos again. This time, I didn't shake. I didn't fall apart. Another feeling took over. Cold. Clear. Steel. I whispered, "All right. If they want me to know, then I'll know everything." I grabbed my phone. In my contacts under the name Graves, Confidential, was a number a customer had quietly passed me months ago. A man who could find out anything, if the reason was strong enough. I called. A deep, clipped voice answered. "Graves speaking." "This is Lorraine Booker," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I need your help." A pause, then. "I've been expecting your call." My stomach tightened. "You knew this was coming?" "You have no idea," Graves said. "I've been monitoring the Harper family for years, and what you just received is only the surface." I straightened. The surface of what? "A trap, Mrs. Booker." His voice dropped. "A trap meant for your son." My fingers dug into the edge of the table until my knuckles turned white. "I want the truth. All of it." "Fine," Graves said. "But prepare yourself. Truth isn't kind." I closed my eyes. I've endured enough cruelty. Now, I just need the truth. Graves exhaled. I'll send you a meeting location. Don't come alone. A chill moved through me. Why not? Because your son, he said carefully, isn't just being manipulated. He's becoming part of something much bigger, something that could destroy him, and you. My voice cracked. Please, tell me what you mean. But Graves gave only one final sentence, like a verdict. Tomorrow night, bring the envelope, and make sure no one sees you. His tone darkened. Mrs. Booker, this isn't about a wedding anymore. This is about survival. That night, I sat alone under the golden lamplight, the photos spread before me like evidence of a life collapsing. In Jonah's face, so young, so conflicted, so lost, I saw someone drifting into a storm he didn't even know he was inside. I whispered, "What are you doing, Jonah? What have you gotten yourself into?" Outside, wind from Lake Michigan whistled through the window frame. Cold, sharp, a warning. And I knew the storm was coming for all of us. I arrived at the cafe Graves had chosen, a quiet, worn-down place on the outskirts of Madison, tucked between two old warehouse rows. So empty that even the wind slipping through shipping containers felt loud. I took the corner table, set the envelope down, tried to steady my breathing. The door opened. Graves walked in. He looked about 50, ordinary build, dark coat, thin metal glasses. But his eyes held a silence that only comes from seeing life's ugliest truths too many times. He sat across from me. "You brought it?" I pushed the envelope over. Graves opened it, examined each photo one by one. No shock, no disgust, just a faint tightening of his brow at a few frames. When he finished, he stacked everything neatly, placed it back onto the table, and looked straight at me. "Mrs. Booker, these aren't evidence. They're bait." My stomach clenched. Bait for what? Graves pulled a thick file from his worn leather bag, the kind I'd only ever seen in crime shows, not real life. "There are things I couldn't say on the phone," he said, "but now you need to hear all of it. If you don't, your son won't just be misled. He could get pulled into something far more dangerous." My pulse hammered. "Is this about Jonah and Marion?" Graves held my gaze for several long seconds, then flipped open the file. What's happening between them is a single loose thread in a much bigger weave. And that weave has a name. Harlan Whitford. I straightened. "Mr. Harlan? Ellen's father?" Graves nodded. "Yes, that man is the architect behind this. Marion is just the facade. Jonah is the pawn." I felt something inside me tear. But why? Why Jonah? Graves turned the file toward me. Bank statements, property reports, debt ledgers, legal summaries. "Because the Whitford family isn't rich the way they pretend to be," he said quietly. "Harlan is drowning in debt. 3 mortgages, 2 business loans, and a massive personal liability he can't repay." I shook my head. I'd always believed the Whitfords were a respected family in Madison. "They hide their cracks well," Graves said. "Even Ellen doesn't know. But Marion knows. And Marion uses every tool she has to keep that family from sinking." Then he said something that made my breath stop. "And one of those tools is your son." I clenched the edge of the table. "How? When?" Graves slid forward a stack of documents. "Look." I did. Money transfers. From Marion's personal account to Jonah's. Not once, not twice. $10,000, $15,000, $50,000. I heard myself whisper, "No, Jonah would never take money like that. Not from anyone." Graves cut in gently but firmly. "Mrs. Booker, people always think they know the people they love until someone cunning enough, someone desperate enough, pulls the strings just right." I felt my lungs tighten. But why would Jonah obey Marion? What could she possibly have to manipulate him? He's a good man. "He is," Graves said. But Marion is skilled, Harlan is desperate, and your son is infatuated to a degree that makes him easy to steer. He flipped to another page, and this is the real reason they want Jonah to marry Elin at any cost. I felt the blood drain from my face. What reason? Her inheritance. My chair nearly slipped. Elin has an inheritance? Graves nodded. Over $4 million, locked in a trust her grandmother left behind. I whispered, like Clementina. Exactly, he said. And just like Clementina, Elin can only access it once she gets married. My mind spun. And if something were to happen to Elin after the wedding? All of it transfers to her spouse. Graves finished. Meaning Jonah. A cold nausea rolled through me. I remembered every moment in Marion's house, every cutting remark, every cold glance, every time they pushed me out of Jonah's life. Not because I was poor, not because I wasn't their kind, but because I was the only threat to the plan. A tremor went through me. What are they planning to do to Elin? Graves didn't answer immediately, and the silence told me everything before he spoke. Finally, I don't have proof they intend to harm her, but I do have proof they've discussed the possibility. My knees weakened. And Jonah, though he didn't initiate anything, has been pulled in deep enough that he no longer sees right from wrong. I covered my mouth. Jonah, my son, what have you gotten into? Graves placed a small recording device on the table. I didn't want you to hear this, he said, but you need to understand how far your son has drifted. My hands were shaking too hard to reach for it. Just tell me. Graves pressed play. Jonah's voice came first, shaky, anxious. What if Elin finds out? Then Marion's voice, smooth, poisonous. She won't, Jonah, but when this is over, everything will be better for my family, for me, for us. I flinched, then Jonah whispered, Please don't pressure me. And Marion responded, soft in the most dangerous way. You know what we need, sweetheart. Harlan can't hold out much longer. You are the key to saving this family. I tasted iron at the back of my throat. Then Marion again, her voice dipping into a place I wished I'd never heard. Just marry her. The rest will fall into place. I broke. I didn't sob loudly. I never do. But tears fell in a way I couldn't stop. Graves' voice came from somewhere far away. Mrs. Booker, that's not the worst. He handed me a slim file. I investigated Harlan separately. I opened it and froze. A life insurance application, filed 1 month before the wedding. Policy owner, Elin Harper. Benefit amount, $2.5 million. Primary beneficiary, Jonah Booker. My blood turned to ice. Oh, God. Graves spoke softly. You see now why the Jonah Marion situation isn't just an affair? It's leverage, control. A web designed to place Jonah exactly where they need him. I had to grip the table to keep myself upright. What do I do now? Graves steadied me for a long moment. The real question is, do you want to save Jonah, or do you want to save Elin? I cried out, I want to save both. He didn't soften. You can't. Not while they're both standing next to a family preparing to use them. One as a shield, the other as a sacrifice. Nothing in my entire life had ever hurt like that sentence. Please, Graves, help me. He nodded slowly. I will. But you must be prepared to pay the price. What price? To save Jonah, he said, you'll have to break Jonah. And to save Elin, you'll have to destroy the Harper family. His words fell like an axe. My mother's old voice echoed in my mind. When choosing between what's easy and what's right, you stand with what's right. I opened my eyes, red but steady. Tell me, I whispered, what is Harlan planning next? Graves didn't blink. They're pushing the wedding forward, 3 weeks from now. My breath hitched. And after the wedding night, it begins. What begins? He said it without flinching. Everything that cannot be undone. I stood, trembling but no longer afraid. Graves, I said, I will not let them harm Elin, and I will not let them turn my son into a murderer. Graves tightened his grip on his bag. Then we start now. The next day I met Graves again, but not in the quiet, half-empty coffee shop from before. This time, he led me to a discreet law office on the second floor of an old red brick building near Capitol Square. No windows, just a yellow ceiling light and the faint smell of old paper, like the room itself had been storing secrets for decades. The lawyer sitting across from me was Sheldon Graves, the older brother of the investigator. 20 years in Wisconsin courts, a man of few words, silver at the temples, hands steady over a thick file, as if he were holding down the lid on a storm. Mrs. Booker, Sheldon began, voice low and deliberate. What my brother uncovered could change everything, if we use it correctly. I gripped the strap of my purse. I'm not trying to destroy anyone. I just want to save my son. And save Elin. Sheldon nodded. To save anyone, you must know everything, even the pieces that hurt. Then he opened the file. A tiny metal clip snapped. A sound so soft, yet it felt like truth was being released from a box that had been locked too long. He slid the first set of documents toward me. This is the lease file for the Shoreline Towers apartment, the one Marion used to meet Jonah. My heart tightened as I touched the papers. Page 1, the rental contract. Tenant listed, Northwinds Consulting LLC. But at the bottom, in small type, legal owner Marion Harper. A cold shiver ran through me. She rented a separate apartment, just to meet Jonah? Graves, seated beside me, answered. Marion keeps her real dealings off the family books. For us, that just makes the trail cleaner. Sheldon placed another file in front of me. This is the life insurance application filed in Elin's name. I opened it, on crisp white paper. Beneficiary, Jonah Booker. Policy amount, $2.5 million. Effective date, 1 week before the wedding. The world tilted. My son, he doesn't know about this. He can't know. Sheldon's voice softened, but only slightly. Correct. Jonah didn't sign any of it. Marion did. Her intentions are clear. Graves added, they've pulled Jonah in so deep he can't see the edges anymore. Money, validation, this illusion that he's special. Marion knows exactly how to trap a man like that. My fingers curled tight against the table. Then Sheldon slid a heavier folder toward me, tagged financial in faded marker. Their plan isn't just emotional manipulation. This is about debt. Massive debt. Harlan Whitford is underwater, Mrs. Booker. The numbers stabbed through me as I read. Business debt, $1.9 million. Mortgage debt, $850,000. Credit debt, $370,000. Personal liability, $520,000. Total, over $3.6 million. My breath caught. Oh my God. Graves continued. Harlan is desperate. Marion is strategic. And Jonah? Jonah is the pawn on the board. Sheldon looked at me with something almost like pity, but sharper. And this is what concerns me most. He placed a report down. This came from an internal source we trust. Harlan has built an escape plan around Elin's inheritance. If he doesn't get access to it, he's finished. My skin prickled. You mean? Graves narrowed his gaze. Harlan won't get his hands dirty. He lets Marion do that. And Marion wants Jonah positioned as the beneficiary, the one who stands to gain if anything happens to Elin. The air grew heavier. Breathing felt like it hurt. I lowered my eyes to the documents. Paper without scent, without warmth, yet holding enough cracks to break a life in half. Sheldon finally broke the silence. We have enough evidence to destroy their entire plan. I looked up sharply. But what about Jonah? Will he be arrested? Will he be charged? Graves leaned forward, voice steady as concrete. We can keep Jonah out of legal crosshairs if you cooperate fully. But that means this. Your son will have to face the truth in a way you cannot shield him from. My throat tightened. I just need him alive, and I need Elin alive. Sheldon folded his hands. The most viable plan is this. We gather more evidence against Marion. Not Harlan. Marion is the operational threat. Harlan is just the motive. I startled, almost shouting. We can't tell Harlan anything. He's the danger. Sheldon nodded calmly. We won't tell him. We'll go above him. Graves opened one final document. We'll notify the only person who has legal authority to intervene on Elin's behalf, the only one who can freeze her trust fund immediately and remove her from the Harpers' control. I blinked. I don't even know someone like that exists. Sheldon gave a thin, grim smile. You'll hear his name soon enough. He's the one person the Harper family fears, and the only one untangled enough to trust. My head felt like it was spinning. I whispered. So, what step is this in your plan? Graves answered slowly, deliberately. The first step is simple and urgent. We get Elin out of the Harper household, before the wedding, as soon as possible. My stomach nodded. But she trusts no one but Marion and Harlan. Sheldon said, That's why we don't approach Elin first. We approach the man with legal guardianship, the one named in her grandmother's will. My breath caught. Her legal guardian? Her grandfather? He's still alive? Graves nodded. Yes, and he is nothing like the Harper family. Who is he? Sheldon spoke the name slowly, as if laying down a final card in a long, quiet game. Horace Lindell, former chair of Lindell Care Hospitals. The man Marion once called the shadow she could never outrun, and the sole legal protector of Elin's inheritance. My mouth went dry. He'll help her? He'll help us? Sheldon leaned forward. If he hears the truth, he won't just help, he'll move immediately. Graves stood. Mrs. Booker, are you ready? I looked at the photos scattered across the table, the financial records, the insurance forms, the quiet, horrifying calculations of a drowning family. I thought of Jonah, my boy, stumbling blind into a darkness too deep for him to climb out of alone. I thought of Elin, innocent, unsuspecting, groomed for a fate she couldn't see. And I thought of myself, a mother who once believed that love meant protecting, and now learning that sometimes love means dragging a truth into daylight even when it burns. I rose to my feet. My voice didn't shake. We go to Horace. Graves nodded. Once we meet him, everything changes. Sheldon added, no going back, no hiding, no saving Jonah without hurting him. I stared at my own hands, worn, patched, scarred by years of stitching clothes and holding a life together alone. Sometimes, I whispered, being a mother means choosing the pain that saves what's left. Graves looked at me with something approaching respect. You're stronger than you think, Lorraine. I gripped the bag holding the photos and files. Not stronger, I murmured, just out of choices. We stepped out of the office. Cold wind from Lake Monona cut across my face, sharp enough to wake me, ground me, sober me. That afternoon, I understood something. The moment I stood in front of Horace Lindell, the story would no longer belong to me. But I still had to go. Because if I stayed silent, if I cowered, if I protected Jonah out of fear, Elin would die, and Jonah, my son, would live the rest of his life not knowing he had become a murderer's instrument. I couldn't let that happen. Not while I still had breath. I never thought I'd ever step into that room. A glass-walled office on the 18th floor of Lindell Care's headquarters in downtown Madison. The kind of place only people with real power ever see from the inside. When the elevator doors opened, I stood in front of the glass entrance, clutching the file bag so tightly the fabric felt like it might tear. Graves walked a step ahead of me and murmured, Mrs. Lorraine, when we meet Mr. Horace Lindell, let him speak first. He doesn't like being rushed, but he is extremely fair. I nodded, even though my heart was pounding hard enough to knock itself loose. The door opened, a wide room, white walls, high ceiling, light pouring in. At the far end, behind a dark wooden desk, sat Horace Lindell. He looked somewhere in his 70s, silver hair, strong posture, eyes sharp in that way only people who've spent a lifetime cutting into human bodies can have. The kind of gaze that has seen what other people refuse to look at. He didn't stand. He just looked at me. "You're Lorraine Booker?" His voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a judge's gavel. "I am," I answered, trying to keep my voice steady even as my throat felt dry. He gave the faintest nod. "Sit." I sank into the chair in front of his desk. Graves took the seat beside me and set the file bag down like evidence in a closed-door trial. Horace started with one sentence. "I'm told you have something important to say about my granddaughter." I took a long breath. "Yes, about Elin. About her safety." The room went so quiet it felt like it was holding its breath. Horace slowly laced his fingers together and rested his hands on the desk. "I've heard some of it already, but I want to hear it from you, not from a detective." I nodded. This was the moment everything would begin to shift. I took out the photos, one by one, and spread them across his desk. No trembling, no hesitation. Photos of Jonah and Marian, the secret apartment lease, the hotel entrance, the arm around the waist, the balcony embrace, the transfer slips, Elin's insurance policy, Harlan's debt, the inheritance documents, all of it. The ticking of the wall clock sounded louder than anything in that room. Horace didn't touch any of the papers. He just looked. For a long time. Finally, he asked, "How long have you known my granddaughter?" "Since she started dating Jonah," I said. "Elin is good, innocent, kind, and very easily hurt." He closed his eyes for a second, like someone had just breathed on an old wound. "Correct," he said quietly. "Elin is just like her mother." Then he opened his eyes again. "Go on." I drew in another breath. "The Harper family is planning to." I looked straight into his eyes. "Use Jonah to get access to Elin's inheritance." Graves added, "They're on the edge of bankruptcy. Elin is their only exit." Horace still didn't move, but his fingers began tapping, slowly, rhythmically on the desk. A quiet, dangerous sound. I continued, "And if they need Jonah's signature, they won't hesitate to hurt someone to get it." The tapping stopped. "You're saying they intend to harm my granddaughter." It wasn't a question, it was a verdict. I nodded. "Once Ellen becomes Jonah's wife, if anything happens to her," I had to grip my sleeve to keep from breaking down. "Everything goes to Jonah." Horace leaned back in his chair. Graves took out the recorder and placed it on the desk. "You should hear this," Graves said. Horace pressed play. Marian's voice came through, smooth, cold, venomous. "Jonah, you just have to do your part. The rest will happen on its own." Then Harlan's voice, low and tense. "Ellen doesn't know anything, and she doesn't need to." I watched Horace. No flinch, no outburst, but when the recording ended, he said something that sent a chill straight through my bones. "I warned her. I warned her mother. I warned Harlan. They wouldn't listen." He reached for the remote, shut off the recording, then stood up. The whole room seemed to tighten around him. Horace turned to us. "Elin will not spend another night in that house." The air rushed from my lungs like someone had pulled me back from the edge of a cliff. He went on. "And your son, Jonah Booker, will be protected. Not because he deserves it," he added, looking at me, "but because he's a victim." I turned my head slightly, hiding the twist of emotion on my face. Horace walked toward the glass wall and looked out over Madison glowing in the afternoon light. "The Harper family has fooled people for a long time," he said, "but they never fooled me." He turned back, eyes sharp as a scalpel. "Harlan and Marian think they're clever, but they forget one thing. My money built Lindell Care, and I have enough left to bury anyone who harms my granddaughter." A shiver went through me. Horace set both hands on the desk. "Here's the plan." Graves and I straightened instinctively. This afternoon, Elin will be moved somewhere safe. I'll exercise temporary guardianship rights to make it happen. Harlan won't be able to stop it. I managed. And Jonah? Horace looked at me for an uncomfortably long moment. Your son must be cut off from Marion. If not, he'll keep acting as their blade. I jumped to my feet. I've tried to pull him away. He doesn't listen. Horace raised a hand. I'm not asking you to pull him away. You can't. He stepped closer, voice deep. He listens to Marion because he believes what he feels with her is love. The only thing that makes a man walk away from that kind of toxic love is a truth that shames him so deeply there's no way back to it. It felt like someone had struck me in the chest. What truth? Horace gestured toward the files. The money transfers, the secret meetings, the recordings. I shook my head, almost pleading. Don't, it'll break him. Horace spoke slowly, each word like a cut. Jonah needs to break. Only then can he stand in the right place. I dropped back into my chair, tears spilling before I could stop them. Being a mother hurts more than anyone tells you, I said, my voice splintering like old wood. Graves placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. It's not that it's hard, he said softly. It's that it hurts, but you're doing the right thing. For the first time that day, Horace's gaze softened slightly. Mrs. Lorraine, my granddaughter will be safe, but to save Jonah, we must force him to look at the darkest part of himself. I nodded. I didn't have the strength left to argue. Horace continued. Tonight, 7 p.m. at the Harper House. I'll be there, and I want you there as well. I froze. That's a confrontation. Yes, he said, and it will be the moment the Harper wall starts to crack. He closed the file. Harlan won't see it coming. Marion will panic. Elin will be removed before they can react. And Jonah. My hands tightened. What about Jonah? Horace met my eyes and said the sentence that shattered my heart. Jonah will watch the truth unfold and lose everything. But it's the only way for him to still have himself. I drew a long, shaking breath, then nodded. I'll be there. Good, Horace replied. Then prepare yourself. When I stepped out of the Lindell Care building, I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. The sun was sinking behind the Capitol dome, washing the city in a dark orange glow. I watched my shadow stretch across the cold concrete, and I knew, tonight, in the Harper house, everything would explode. There would be no turning back for any of us. That confrontation would change my life, Jonah's life, Elin's life, and I would have to stand in the middle of it all. I arrived at the Harper house just as the sky went dark. The wind off Lake Mendota was sharp, the kind of cold that scrapes the skin and warns you something is about to break. The house glowed bright, every window lit in a warm golden hue, but the warmth was fake, too polished, too curated. It made my stomach turn. Graves walked beside me. Behind us, Horace Lindell's car pulled in. He stepped out, adjusted his long coat, and carried himself like a man ready to excise a tumor that had gone too long untreated. No one spoke. We didn't need to. The front door opened. Marion stood there first. She wore a deep wine-colored dress, hair curled perfectly, lipstick sharp and red, flawless in a way that felt dangerous. When her eyes landed on Horace, she froze. What are you doing here? Her voice trembled just slightly, not enough for strangers to notice, but enough for me to see the first crack in her mask. Horace didn't answer. He simply walked past her. At the end of the hallway, Harlan appeared. His face drained of color when he saw Horace, like his entire illusion of control had been ripped away in one violent motion. Horace, we didn't arrange. No arrangement needed, Horace said. The words froze the house. We moved into the large sitting room, the space the Harpers loved to flaunt during their parties. Wine on the table, glasses set, candles already lit, a scene set for elegance or for hiding a storm. Jonah stood near the window. His shoulders were rounded, his face pale, eyes sunken like he hadn't slept in days. When he saw me, he stepped back. Mom? What are you doing here? His voice sounded like a lost boy in a supermarket, not the grown man I had raised. I wanted to hold him, but this wasn't a night for softness. Marion moved closer to him, a small gesture, but unmistakable. Her hand slid gently onto his back, claiming him. I clenched my jaw. Horace stepped forward, voice steady and ice cold. "Harlan, we're going to talk." Harlan swallowed. "Horace, this isn't more appropriate," Horace said, "than the game you're playing with my granddaughter's life." The room cracked like glass under pressure. Marion surged forward. "No one is playing any game. Elin loves Jonah. Jonah loves Elin. They're two adults." Graves dropped the file onto the table. The thud hit like a gunshot. "These," he said, "are the transfer records from your account to Jonah's. And this," he slid another set forward, "is the life insurance policy taken out on Elin. Beneficiary, Jonah Booker." Marion's face shattered. Jonah blinked, confused. "Life insurance? What? What does that mean?" He turned to me, eyes wide, frightened. "Mom? What are they talking about?" I wanted to protect him, but I had promised the truth. I pointed to the documents. "It means Marion listed you as the person who inherits everything, if something happens to Elin after the wedding." Jonah's eyes stretched wide. No, she wouldn't. She couldn't." Marion grabbed his arm. "Jonah, don't listen to them. You know what we have." Horace slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, Marion." Silence cracked through the room. He looked at Jonah, not with anger, but with deep, painful pity. "Son, you're being used." Jonah's voice broke. "No, she helped me. She believed in me. She gave me a chance." I watched my son crumble right in front of me. Marion panicked. "Jonah, you don't have to explain anything. What we have is—" "What you have!" Horace roared, his face flushed red. "A woman in her 50s and a boy barely past 20. Is that what you want me to expose first? The bed or the bank accounts?" Marion staggered back. Harlan trembled, gripping a chair for balance. Jonah stared, horrified. "Marion, what is he talking about?" Marion stumbled. "Jonah, no. They're twisting everything. You know us. You know—" "You know nothing," Horace snapped. He nodded to Graves. Graves took out his phone and pressed play. Marion's voice filled the room, silky, cold. "Just marry her. The rest will happen on its own." Jonah didn't blink, didn't breathe. He simply collapsed onto a chair. You lied to me," he whispered. Marion lunged toward him. "Jonah, listen!" He pushed her away. For the first time, he stood, voice shaking. "You used me! Everything was a lie!" Marion shook violently. "Jonah, please!" Jonah's voice cracked, raw. "Did I misunderstand the bed too, Marion?" The room froze. Even Graves stopped breathing. Marion slid to the ground. Harlan whispered, "Oh God, oh God." Horace stood tall, delivering the verdict. "It's over, Marion." He turned to Harlan. "Call your lawyers, but I'll move faster than you can react." Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Lorraine, Elin is already on her way to a safe location. She will never set foot in this house again." A tear slipped down my cheek. Jonah sank to the floor, hands over his head. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't see." I knelt beside him. "It's okay, son," I whispered. "You see now." Horace stepped forward. "We're done here. Tonight the Harper house falls." He nodded to Graves. "Take Lorraine and Jonah out." I helped my shaking son to his feet. As we crossed the threshold, Marion's screams erupted behind us. "No, no, no! It's all mine. No one takes anything from me." But her voice was only an echo inside a castle collapsing. Outside, snow began to fall, soft, silent. Almost like the sky itself was rinsing away everything that had just happened. And deep inside, I knew. This wasn't the ending. But it was the first moment where darkness finally cracked, and light began to seep through. The next morning, Madison lay under a thin sheet of snow, soft, quiet, as if someone had pulled a blanket over the chaos from the night before. I sat in my small living room, hands wrapped around a warm cup of tea. Jonah slept on the sofa across from me, his eyes sunken, his face hollow, but for the first time in a long time, there was no mask. Just a boy who had lost his way and was finally trying to find the road back. The door opened and Graves stepped in, brushing snow off his coat. "Mrs. Lorraine, it's starting." My heart tightened. "What do you mean, starting?" "The Harper family." He sat beside me. "Horace filed everything last night. The court approved an emergency financial review. Their accounts are frozen. Banks and state auditors are already moving in." I gripped my cup harder. "And Marion?" Graves didn't soften his voice. He didn't need to. "She's in deep trouble. The transfers are traceable. The life insurance policy is under investigation for intent to defraud. And she no longer has access to Jonah." I nodded slowly, letting out a long breath. Part relief, part grief, part something I didn't know how to name. "And Elin?" I asked. "Safe," Graves replied. "With Horace. She knows enough of the truth to understand she's being protected, not abandoned." I leaned back on the couch. A single tear slipped out, not from pain, but from release. The first release in weeks. Across the room, Jonah stirred. Moments later, he sat up, blinking, his voice still raw. "Mom." He looked at me like he was afraid I might disappear. I don't even know what to say. I waited. "Mom." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry. Not because I was wrong, but because I didn't see where I was being led. You warned me, I didn't listen." He dropped his head. "I hurt you, a lot." I stood, walked to him, and gently ran my hand through his hair, the way I did when he was small. "Son," I whispered, "what matters isn't that you got lost, but that you came back." Jonah pulled me into a tight hug, the kind a child gives when they're terrified they almost lost you. "I don't want to be who Marion tried to make me," he said. "I want to start over. I want to be right again." I smoothed his back. "Then that's exactly what you'll do." Graves watched quietly, then he cleared his throat. "Mrs. Lorraine, there's one more thing." I turned. "Horace wants to see you." I frowned. "Me? Why?" He said, Graves took out a small note, "The woman brave enough to walk into the Harper den to save 2 children is someone I want to thank in person." I was too stunned to answer. That afternoon, I returned to Horace Lindell's office. This time, he was no longer the man confronting a family empire, but a grandfather closing a long chapter. When I stepped in, he looked at me with softer eyes than the night before. "My granddaughter is safe," he said, "thanks in part to you." I shook my head. "I just did what any mother would do." He raised a brow. "No, not every mother can face the truth about her own child. That's the hardest part." I went quiet. He continued. "I want you to know, I'll take care of Elin, and I'll help Jonah sever every tie the Harpers tried to put around his neck. But the rest, that belongs to you." I asked softly, "The rest?" Horace looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You need to forgive yourself." The words hit deeper than I expected. He rested a hand on his desk. "If you don't, you'll carry this war inside you for the rest of your life. And Jonah, he'll see it in you." I lowered my head, not crying, just absorbing the truth. "Thank you," I said, "for believing me." "I don't believe people," he replied. "I believe facts." That evening, I returned home. I made tea and sat by the window, watching snow settle on the roofs across Madison. Jonah stood outside on the porch, wrapped in a scarf, looking up at the sky. He turned back inside and asked quietly, "Mom, what happens to us now?" I smiled, a real smile, one I hadn't felt in what seemed like years. "We start over," I said, "just the 2 of us." Jonah smiled back, tired but honest. I want that. I closed the door behind me, warmth filling my chest. That night, lying in my old bed, listening to the wind whistle through the window frame, I realized I had lost so much. But I had recovered the one thing that mattered most, a son who had finally found himself again. And that's the kind of miracle any mother quietly prays for, even in the darkest moments. If this story made you think of someone in your own life, leave me a small sign by hitting like. And if you want more journeys like this one, stories about truth, about family, and about finding each other again, even when we're no longer young, subscribe to the channel so we can meet again in the next story. Thank you for being here.